And we're live. How's it going, Northreach? Welcome to the Chopping Block, the only Amtgard podcast where Vex did a sick kickflip last season, and you probably weren't even paying attention. For those of you just joining us, I'm your host, Hars, and with me is my co-host, Vex.
Hello.
And with us, returning for his second appearance on our show, is the King of the North himself, Duke Sir Gorin.
Howdy, everybody.
How's it going today, Gorin?
Pretty good.
Awesome. So I understand you just got back from doing an expo in Neverwinter?
Winter's Edge.
Winter's
Atlanta.
Edge, sorry. So how'd that all go?
Oh, it's pretty awesome. Winter's Edge is a super cool kingdom, and they had a really cool event. It's very similar to our Grand Academy event. It's in its third year. It's called Arts and Sciences Symposium, and those of you guys that are listening, if you ever get the chance to attend it, it's pretty darn cool. They had instructors from all over the country, from both inside of Amtgard and other gaming groups as well. They had some instructors from Vexicus and stuff like that. Just a really fun group of people. Super awesome site and some quality learning.
It sounds awesome. Were they having you work there as an instructor?
Yeah, I did 6 classes there on a variety of topics, like everything from battle game and quest design to organizational development, leadership, things like that.
Nice. All right, well, for some of our longtime watchers, we're actually introducing a new segment of our show called Beneath the Armor, where we look at some of our returning guests and just talk a bit about their involvement in the history of Amtgard. Or, well, I guess not exactly the history of Amtgard, but, more the history of Northreach. But from what Gorin's been saying, we've been sort of helping shape out a lot of what's been going on. Is that true, Gorin?
I mean, sure. We're kind of a novelty in the Amtgard world in that, we're a kingdom in Alaska. We kind of have a small air of mystery in that not many people get to visit us because of just how cut off we are from the rest of the Amtgard world. So they tend to pay attention to what's going on, and a lot of people lurk our Facebook pages, and a lot of people listen to us when we talk about what we're doing when we travel. And so yeah, there's a lot of people that just watch what we do.
That's true. I've been noticing a lot more activity on our Facebook page that just from people I just haven't seen before. So how long have you been at this game now, actually?
Let's see, the first time I went out to Amtgard, I want to say was either June or either late June or early July of the year 2000. So a little over 18 or almost 18 years now.
Nice. So sounds like you've been at this for more than a hot minute.
Yeah, coming up on 2 decades.
Nice. You got anything special planned for your 2-decade anniversary?
Retirement.
Yeah, 20 years. I think that's a good number to retire at.
So Amtgard in Alaska is a young adult now. Like a legal young adult.
Yeah.
It is.
They grow up so fast.
It just got its license to party, and now it's got to do all kinds of adult stuff.
Ah, yo.
So how did you first come across Amtgard?
It's kind of a funny story. Long before I knew about Amtgard, we started a boffer group based on some pictures that we'd stumbled across, the internet back when the internet didn't have a lot of pictures. Mm-hmm. And we saw pictures of some guys with swords that looked like they were made out of pipe insulation and duct tape, and so we made some of our own, and we smacked each other around for a couple of years. And then I took a semester off from college, and when I came back up, I wasn't really doing any of that. I was really heavy into paintball at the time. Mm-hmm. And me and for those of you guys that know her, Astriana, her brother used to be pretty heavy in Amtgard. His name was Barar. And he and I were lurking around the local gaming store called the Comic Shop, and we saw some flyers up for Amtgard. We didn't know what Amtgard was, but it sort of modeled itself as sort of like live action D&D. We thought that was pretty funny, so we didn't have anything going on that Saturday afternoon, and we decided we were going to kill some time by going and making fun of the LARP dorks. So we drove out to the park, and I saw a few people from the old university club, out there, and so we kind of dropped out. We were chatting with some of the people that we already knew, and kind of giving them a hard time about running around playing D&D for reals. And that was the first time I met Sir Goldcrest. Well, actually, not technically the first time I met him, because I didn't realize it, but he and I had been talking about online about other gaming stuff, because he found me through the Gaming Society when he first got stationed in Alaska, like months and months before. But so I met him again, although I didn't realize it at the time. And he was chatting with me about what Amtgard is. And if you guys have ever met Sir Goldcrest, he's pretty good at selling Amtgard in a really positive light. Mm-hmm. And so at the end of that 15-minute conversation or so, I walked away thinking that there might actually be some potential in this, and it wasn't just a bunch of geeks running around pretending to be elves. And so I came back a couple weeks later, brought like 10 people with me, and that was in around the August timeframe, I guess. I got us hooked up with the gym through the UAF gaming group that I still ran, and the rest is sort of history. I think I took office as the first champion pro tem once the initial champion stepped down, and I've more or less been in office ever since.
And this was in Astral Winds, correct?
Yeah, yep. Astral Winds, up in the Shire of Astral Winds, way up in Fairbanks, Alaska.
During the days of old. So can you tell us a little bit about your involvement in the overall growth of Northreach? Because I know you've had a pretty big hand in most of it.
Yeah, I mean, like I was, when I first started there, I stepped up as champion, and I think it was during that first year that Sir Goldcrest paged me, and so I was a page. I had no idea what that meant at the time, but I knew that meant that I got to do more Amtgard with a dude that I really liked hanging out with, and so he and I would talk about stuff all the time, and we both had a similar approach to Amtgard, approaching it from sort of a leadership standpoint and trying to develop it as an organization, make this as legit as we could, and work on growing it. So I ran for I was champion, I think, for like maybe 5 terms in a row, or close to that then, and then he got stationed somewhere else after the first couple of years. After those couple of years, I think it was the first time I ran for. It might have been a year later. I ran for Monarch. I think Ramiel ran for 2 terms before that, and before, in between there, I was doing Regent and things like that. But we worked really hard with. I had a small group of people that I think Astriano might be one of the few. Well, there's a few. Minibard, Valerian, a few others. We were in a company back then called the Fallen Ones, and we were running around doing company stuff. And after a while, we started to realize all the negative, elements that companies bring with them, whether they really intend to or not. And so we just sort of decided to disband the company and focus purely on growing the organization. And that was, I don't know, maybe back in the 2004-ish time frame.
So is that what TIFO stands for in your Facebook name?
It is. That's something I used to throw in whenever they forced me to have a last name, or if the username Gorin was already taken, because it's actually a really common Russian name. And so, back in the day, I had to use like TFO for my ICQ username. If anybody remembers what ICQ was, it was an instant messenger from way back in the day. And there's 4.2 million Gorins. So I had to add something to it. And so we worked really hard on growing Astral Winds. Like our first big project was Barony, and I remember the 5-inch binder that we presented, I believe, at Arrakis. We presented to the Dragonspine board of directors to request, promotion to Barony, and it was just huge, and it was ridiculous, and it was way over the top, and it was more than our kingdom had ever seen for that sort of thing. And we were really proud of it. So we got promoted to Barony, and we did the same thing for Duchy. We just kept kind of pushing what we were doing, trying to be as excellent as possible, and turned it into a Duchy. And then after that, I sort of set my personal sights on the rest of Alaska. And I want to say back in, maybe it was 06 maybe, I sat down with a group of people that I thought would be interested in the project, and Lily gave a PowerPoint presentation called the Alaskan Amtgard Expansion Initiative, or the AAEI. And it sort of put out a roadmap of which cities to try and get Amtgard built in, what sort of timeline we wanted to see for that, etc. And we just sort of set our sights on that. And we tried several times to start a park in Anchorage, And it was like the castle in the swamp. It took 3 tries to get one up and running, and that was mostly from Pyro actually getting stationed down there, and then me driving down like every weekend to help him with putting it together.
All the way from Fairbanks?
Oh yeah. I used to drive down literally for like 3 months straight. One summer I drove down like every single weekend to help him put the park together down in Anchorage.
Dedication at its finest.
He needed the support. He was working with a group of folks that were sort of doing their own LARP thing, and he was trying to convince them that Amtgard might be a better way to go. And so I would come down and help work with them, and we'd bring equipment down and help make things and see what we could do to sort of sell the concept to the folks who were already into some kind of LARPing. And that was sort of the birth of Loop and Moon.
We're learning a lot today.
Yeah, and you're welcome to cut me off at any point, because there's a lot of history here, so I could probably talk forever.
No, I mean, this is kind of your episode, so really, if you want to go expand on certain stuff, by all means, we encourage it.
Well, as a brief overview history, so that
fair.
was the foundation of Loop and Moon. I was still in Fairbanks at the time, so they were working on getting a chapter together. We worked with them really hard. We got them up and running, and then it sort of went downhill a little bit. And when I moved to Anchorage back in, I guess it was the end of 2010. I remember when I showed up, unfortunately, they didn't have a place to play where they could fight. And so for Amtgard meetings, they were just sort of meeting in a classroom in the library at UAA and playing board games, and just sort of hanging out, which was cool because it was definitely like something. They were trying to keep the group moving. But I jumped in and started pushing them back towards getting to a place where we could fight. And we ended up finding some spaces that worked pretty well and actually got us back going. I think that was when we bought our first insurance policy. Because at the time they had the money for it, but for some reason they didn't think that they would be able to afford an insurance policy. And so I did some research and we got hooked up with that. And that was right around the time that we did the first Ren Fair. And so I remember at the time the Loop and Moon All thing was not interested in doing the Ren Fair proposal I had, which was basically making and selling swords and sort of running the Ren Fair booth, similar to what we do now. And the All thing actually voted it down, so I just did it myself out of my own pocket, and then just donated the money to the group. At the time, it wasn't a ton, but I think I only was able to invest like, I don't know, $600, and we made like $1,200 out of it. So, so the proof of concept being what it was, that was sort of the formation of the Renaissance Fair. And I mean, there was tons of folks that jumped in and helped make all the subsequent fairs what they are. And so that was our first big fundraiser, I guess. Sort of the same thing happened with Wolf's Cry. I did the first Wolf's Cry, and I want to say Mara was Baroness of Loop and Moon at the time, and we didn't really have any money for it or anything like that, and it wasn't really something that was on the agenda. But it's always been a dream of mine. Growing up playing Amtgard in Alaska, I always had to fly somewhere to go to an event, and it would cost tons of money to do that, like $1,200 to $1,700, right? Every time I wanted to go to an event, right. So it always been a dream to have an event that I could drive to. So I just asked. I said, Mara, will you just let me put an event together, and just run it? And if it's good, it's good. If it's not, it's not. And it'll be easy. It should pay for itself. It's not too big of a deal. And since she was my squire at the time, she couldn't tell me no, and so I did it. But I ran the event, and it was the very first Wolf's Cry was held at like the Eagle River Campground. I think 46 people showed up. It wasn't huge by any stretch of the imagination. It rained a lot.
I remember that. I was actually there for the first one.
It was not super great, but it created something that people talked about. And so when we held the next one, the next year, there was, I think, I want to say 60 or 70 people there. Also at the Eagle River Campground. And the second one, it made it clear that campground wasn't going to be big enough. So Wolf's Cry 3 was the first time we did it in the Rybarczyk field over at the State Fair. And that's the first time we pushed 100 people. And that was the first 100-person event that we ever had in Alaska. So that was pretty cool. And that was right after that was when I decided we needed to do dungeon crawl.
So backpedaling a little bit there. So you said you weren't in office at all at the time when you were starting the first Wolf's Cry?
I'm pretty sure I wasn't. I may have been like a pro tem GMR or even a local champion. I'm not sure. It does blur, and I get old, and some of this stuff gets foggy. But I wasn't. I definitely wasn't in executive office. I just asked if I could do it because we needed an event. That's something I'd always dreamed of, and so I wanted to do it. And this is at the same time we're trying to start pushing the concept of Northreach, right?
Right.
And so I actually have downstairs in my Amtgard room at the first Wolf's Cry. There was 3 parks in Alaska. This is Frozen Coast was a thing. They showed up at a rent fair and said, "Hey, we want to start a group. This looks awesome." And so me and Anton helped Lucian and his crew set stuff up, and then Anton and I drove down to Kenai almost every weekend for a couple months to help just to help and encourage that awesome group of people that's found everything down there. And so we had the Shire of Frozen Coast, the Duchy of Esterwinds, and the Barony of Lupin Moon at the time. And so I drafted this what we call the Alliance of Northreach. That was basically just a treaty that said hey, we all think it would be really cool to work together towards the same goals, and that's pretty much what it said. And all the monarchs signed it. And then at Wolf's Cry 2, we did the same thing. So I've got copies of both of those. And that was sort of the foundation for Northreach, the principality. And so it wasn't. It was the year after that, I think, that we became a principality. And then I did dungeon crawl that first year down in Frozen Coast because I figured we needed an event in the wintertime, and I wanted to show people that we could do that. Because people told me there was no way to have a winter event, and I said, "You're wrong. Let me show you." And so we did, and it was amazing. I think we had almost 100 people show up to that very first one. It was 93 or 96 people.
It was a lot of people. I remember that much.
It was absolutely amazing, and it was just it was beyond what people expected, and so they had a really good time. And again, there was an amazing crew of people that were willing to jump. There's always been so much enthusiasm in Northreach that, if I can come up with an idea and convince people that we should try it, there's no end of enthusiastic support to just sort of make those dreams a reality. And so Frozen Coast, they came up with a huge, amazing group of people that put together all of the walls that we use today. They made, it was over 4 years ago for that first dungeon crawl event.
And a lot of those walls we still use for Dungeon Crawler today, I believe.
Yeah, no, they're the same ones we just used. So I mean, as far as, because this initial question was what my involvement was in Northreach. Those are some of the foundational things. I've also helped to drive the corporas that we use. Again, along with lots of people's help, Hars, you were on both corpora committees, right?
Yes, I believe I was.
So, I mean, it's always been a huge communal thing. I know that I drive a lot of it, but man, I don't do all the work, that's for sure. I just try to provide, I think, perspective. As somebody that's been here since pretty much the very beginning of Amtgard in Alaska, I've definitely helped to drive the culture, the things that we think of as socially acceptable and not. As anybody knows that travels around the country, the cultural norms from one kingdom to the next can vary wildly. And the things that we don't tolerate here can be commonplace in other places. So I've always tried to make sure that we do really good at keeping a positive and professional culture. Because I've been around a long time and I travel a lot, I interface with our kingdom a lot and things like that on helping us get to where we were as far as being the awesomest kingdom that we can be.
See, I'll admit, having not really done much traveling for Amtgard outside of state, I used to think that was sort of a hyperbole, but, after we started the show and we started interviewing people like, Sir Randall and Azrael Jade, just hearing all the stories they were telling, it's, wow, there really is no other place like here.
No, Northreach is a very unique place, which is why I really love to get people to come up and experience it, and I really like to get our members to travel to other kingdoms because it gives them really good perspective. It definitely lets them appreciate the things that we do differently here, but it also lets them go out and see other things, and again with that extra perspective that they can bring home and say, hey, here's some ways that we could try something different that I saw in another place. And so that's super good too.
So, I actually had a question. So, earlier this week, Rosedath had posted something about wanting to start up the Circle of Steel, and I know earlier you were talking about, like, how dangerous there were, like, the dangers of, like, potential dangers of fight companies, but do you see, like, any other possible potential that could come from them, like, if we were to do this?
So, as current king, I want to be really careful in how I answer that. A lot of people know how I personally feel about companies, and I generally don't have a super positive outlook on companies as an institution. And that's just because more often than not, they turn into, detrimental elements in the organization.
Like clicks?
Well, yeah, it all comes down to what they are at their foundation. Now, that doesn't mean companies can't be great things. Companies can be really, really cool. They can give people lots of motivation. They can, bring some people together that make a great support network for each other and encourage each other and help them participate in Amtgard to the fullest. And I've seen that happen plenty of times. So I'm not hating on companies like entirely. They definitely can do some really good things. But it's a double-edged sword. Like they can do the exact opposite of that as well. And they're a social construct, right? They're very visible because generally companies have garb and banners and they work together so that people are very aware of their presence. But at their core, companies practice exclusivity, right? Not everybody gets to be a member of a company. Somebody has to choose that you're good enough to be a part of the company or that you fit in, whatever. So they're selective by nature, as opposed to like say just your Amtgard chapter, which unless you break some code of conduct or you're not old enough or something like that, it's inclusive. Anybody can be a member, right? Like anybody can be a member of Northreach. You don't have to get voted in. Whereas with a company, you do. And I've seen some companies take that to some weird extremes where they have initiation rituals and things like that border on hazing. And so those are kind of elements that I don't look at as positive ones. I want people that come to Amtgard to feel like they can be included, that they don't have to be in a company to be included, and that they can be important regardless. We don't really have like companies in Northreach that I think are detrimental. This is mostly me talking about companies as a hypothetical construct. But if you've ever been to kingdoms where company culture is really strong, you see that stuff. And when I travel to big events, one of the things that I see pretty much universally is that people don't generally hang out with each other based on where they're from. They hang out with each other based on what company they're in. So you'll always see like company camps, but you don't see like kingdom camps or even like park camps or anything like that. One of the most lasting memories on the topic that I have was the first time we traveled to Rakis, which would have been in 2003. We all had Astral Winds garb, right? And it was really cool. And I remember going to the feast. We're walking down from our camp. We're walking down the hill. There's like 7 of us, all in Astral Winds garb. And we passed a couple of people, and they stopped and they said, "Oh, your company garb is awesome. What company are you in?" And we said, "This is our land garb." And the person was, they were genuinely confused. They were like, "What do you mean land garb? What is that?" Like they literally had no idea what that meant. And that was really profound to me. And it's part of, I think, the strength of Northreach and its regions is that people have things like land garb and they celebrate, the park that they're from and the kingdom that they're in, as opposed to which company they're in. And so those are things that make us stronger, that are kind of rare in other places. And it's something that I sort of preach to kingdoms when, like, I remember when Westmarch was first wanting to become a kingdom and I helped them with their Principality Corpora and some other things. I said, you guys need to make land garb. And when you bid for kingdom, like, people need to be able to recognize where you're from based on, what you're wearing. And they did that. And their land garb was amazing because their colors are red and white. So it was very striking. And when they all, like 20 of them rolled up in land garb, it was really, really impressive. And it stood out even more how rarely you see that. Instead you see company garb. And so that's, I don't know if that answers your question. That's just me rambling a little bit about companies.
No, I think I'm picking up what you're putting down here. So I think I've only got one other question that pertains to the Beneath the Armor segment we have, unless you had anything, Vex? All right. Well, in that case, so if I were to ask you one last thing, Gorin, like on the more prepared questions, Gorin. So if you were to like give advice to like the next person who would become the next king of Northreach, what would you give to that person?
It depends on how much time and how much advice I could give them. If I had to boil it down to like one thing, it would be respect the culture. Northreach is what it is because over almost 2 decades now we have developed a culture. We've developed a culture of excellence where we don't cut corners, we don't lower the bar, and we don't make excuses. We do the right thing and we uphold our standards. And we look at the way we've done things in the past. We're constantly trying to improve, so that's a good thing. But we don't try to change for change's sake. We look at what the ramifications of our actions be, and we respect that. And so I think respecting the culture is something that's really important.
Sounds as solid advice as any. All right, well, I guess now we can move on to the more to the questions that other people asked. A lot of these we kind of touched on during the initial interview, but I still see 1 or 2 that stick out. So this first one we have is from Malik, and that is, I know we talked about like how you made the duck armor for your son during our last episode with you, but are there any other particularly proud ANS items you made for Amtgard?
Oh, I mean, the duck armor I'm probably the most proud of, because it was one of the first projects I ever did where sort of start to finish it all had a theme, and it all came out really, really well. Man, I don't know, like I've done a lot of ANS stuff because I've run for office so much. I've had to enter crown quals a lot. I think I've entered crown quals more than 30 times now. I don't know. I'm a really big fan of my helmet with the sunglasses built into it. Like, I really dig that thing.
That is a cool helmet.
And my current set of paladin armor, the green armor with the big metallic plate accent things, I really like that armor too.
Yeah, that is nice. I'll throw a few pictures up for that so that other people can see it in case they haven't, because that's some nice stuff.
Okay. What is your favorite class that non-knights can play?
Asked by Drasek.
Mm.
In the current rule set, it would have to be healer. It really allows me to support my team, which I like doing a lot, especially when I find parks with a lot of younger members. So for casual play, I would say healer. For competitive play, if I can't choose paladin, for competitive play, I would have to say bard with armor.
Yeah, that's true. Bards can get into some nasty stuff when they go competitive.
I heard some fun stories this weekend about you hamming it up as a healer.
Oh, like old school hamming it up?
Like evangelical.
You can't just leave us there, Vex.
Yelling it out.
Yeah, I did that for a little while for the fun of it. I know that people might find that offensive today. So I try not to point it out as something that is particularly positive. I spent at least a couple of months one summer running around as a sort of like an evangelical healer and sort of hamming up the southern faith healing as I was running around healing people.
I was just about to say, so you were like faith healing it, or?
Yeah, I really hammed that up for a bit. And again, that may not be as culturally sensitive as we should strive to be, but there were some comical moments from that for sure.
That's fair. Alright, I think that pretty much covers all the actual questions we got from the submission ones, so I guess now we can just sort of move on to the lightning round, Vex. So, for those of you just watching this season, this is pretty much where I just let Vex go off the leash and just do whatever she wants. So, Vex, with that, it's all you.
I kind of have a structured lightning round, and I kind of already started on it.
Oh.
Yeah. It's more aimed at sort of how you play Amtgard, I guess. Like, you in Amtgard as a player. Not as an officer, not as a, historic figure, but as a player. So, What is your least favorite class to fight as?
Oh, that's a tough one. My least favorite class right now would probably be Archer, and that's no disrespect to any of the Archer faithful out there. It's just not my bag.
What's your favorite weapon combo?
Oh, that's tough. I would say, I mean, right now it's medium shield and sword because that's what my favorite classes get to use. But if I can play with anything, it's probably sort of a down spear Madu and single short.
What's your least favorite weapon combo?
Oh, that's a tough one. I gotta think about that. I mean, if we're in a battle game, I don't know. I don't really have one. I can't honestly can't. Maybe dual long swords.
Double daggers.
I don't know.
I love double daggers.
I was gonna say I wouldn't
Yeah,
knock double daggers.
People.
I was gonna say Gorin did some nasty stuff when he was a bard doing double daggers.
All right. What is your favorite ANS category?
Oh,
What is your favorite ANS
construction.
category to make stuff for?
Yeah, construction.
Right.
You know, that's if I look at what I've done and what I've received awards for, I think I'm sitting at 10 owls, and all my other ANS categories are a little less than that. So I obviously like construction more.
What's your least favorite?
My least favorite ANS category, cooking.
Any particular reason why on that?
So you get to eat it
Oh,
when you
Well,
make it.
I'm not the best chef. I don't enjoy cooking as much as I like putting other stuff together. There's also the impermanence of what you make. Like you make food for somebody else, they eat it, and then it's gone. Whereas if I make something in a construction or garbing category, I get to use it and keep it and play with it. And a lot of times, at least historically, and I think that Northreach is working hard to change that, cooking has been sort of looked down upon. So it's thought of as like a sort of a cheater category.
1 second.
So people used to just use cooking as sort of like the equivalent of an easy A that you would take, so you could just get the quals that you needed. And so I don't know if people really took it seriously. But...
Sorry about that. We had an alien invasion. That's why the dogs are freaking out. So we were talking about cooking for ANS and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. The question was my least favorite categories. So
Right. That's right. Okay.
there's also a bunch of other stuff that I'm just not very good at, like jewelry or photography. Or I've entered stuff in those categories, but I'm definitely not super skilled there.
What's your favorite type of battle game?
My favorite type of battle game? I mean, definitely class battles. I like class battles. They're far more strategic in nature than militia or ditches are. I like games with strategic elements that require teamwork, as opposed to what I call two-dimensional games, which are based around either a single objective or just killing your opponents. I like things that make you strategize and work together as a team.
I think I'm out.
All right. Well, I think this is a good time to call it a night then. So, Gorin, I just wanted to say thanks again for coming back to do another episode with us. And this was fun actually. It was fun learning about some of the history of the development side of Northreach.
Yeah, one of these days we should sit down and do an actual blow by blow History Channel recounting of the kingdom.
I was actually thinking of. Did you ever see what's his name? Bill Worst, the guy who did the history of Japan and history of the world videos.
Yeah.
I was thinking about for an ANS project one day, just doing a video in that style with the history of Northreach.
Have you seen Drunk History
I have not. No,
on the British Comedy Channel?
I haven't.
That might be actually a really cool project if you were to get some people together who have been around since the founding of each of their parks, or some people that were involved in the the formation of the kingdom, or people that sort of overarchingly put it all together, and just have like each of them do like segments. That could be pretty cool, like archival footage type of thing. And
I could totally get behind that.
That'd be a sweet A&S project.
Yeah, I'd be up for it. All right, well, we'll probably put that on the to-do list. Until then, we hope you guys enjoyed watching our episode. Tune in next time where we'll be interviewing one of our homegrown members that went on to become a sword knight, Sir Sane. Until then, I'm Hars, this is Vex, and you've been watching The Chopping Block. Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.